Right now, somewhere in your closet, there's a shirt you haven't worn in 8 months. And yet, every single morning, you still put something on before you leave the house. You don't question it. You don't even think about it. But here's the thing. For roughly 5 million years of human and pre-human history, nobody did that. Not once. No shirts, no pants, no socks, nothing. And then, at some point, that changed forever. Today we're solving one of the strangest, smelliest mysteries in human history. Not with old bones, not with cave paintings, but with something genuinely disgusting. Lice. Yes, we figured out when humans started wearing clothes using bugs that live in your hair. Stay with me because this gets weirder than you think. Let's set the scene. Roughly 1 million years ago, our ancestors lost most of their body hair. Not all of it. Just the thick fur coat that basically every other mammal on Earth still wears. Scientists believe this happened because early humans were becoming persistent hunters, chasing prey for hours across hot African plains, and a thick fur coat is basically wearing a parka to a marathon. Losing the fur let us sweat efficiently and cool down, which meant we could literally run animals to exhaustion. Great for hunting. Absolutely terrible for staying warm at night. So picture this. You're a nearly hairless human standing on the African savanna and the sun just went down. No fur. No jacket. No 24-hour convenience store. Just you, shivering, majorly regretting some recent evolutionary choices. This is the gap. Humans lost their natural insulation almost a million years before they figured out how to replace it. For hundreds of thousands of years, we were the most exposed, least protected mammal walking around. And somehow, we survived that gap without dying out. Respect. Now here's where it gets genuinely clever. Clothing doesn't survive in the archaeological record. Fabric, hide, plant fiber, it all rots away within a few centuries. So how do you figure out when humans started wearing clothes if the clothes themselves are long gone? This is where scientists did something almost nobody would think of. They studied lice. Stick with me here. Head lice have lived on humans for millions of years. They're built to cling to hair. But there's a second, completely different species. Body lice, sometimes called clothing lice. And clothing lice are not built for hair at all. They're built to live and lay eggs in the seams of fabric. They physically cannot survive without clothing. Which means, logically, body lice could not have existed until humans actually started wearing clothes. No clothes, no habitat, no lice. So a team of researchers did something brilliant. They sequenced the DNA of body lice and calculated exactly when they genetically split off from head lice, essentially time-stamping the invention of clothing using the bugs that live in it. And the answer they landed on was jaw-dropping. Roughly 170,000 years ago. Let that sink in for a second. Humans lost their body hair around 1 million years ago. We didn't start covering ourselves back up until about 170,000 years ago. That means for roughly 800,000 years. Our ancestors were just out here, fully exposed. No shirts, no blankets, nothing. If you think your gym clothes situation is bad, remember it could be worse. You could be a Homo erectus in an ice age with nothing but your own skin and your own bad decisions. And here's the part that should genuinely blow your mind. This clothing discovery happened about 70,000 years before humans started migrating into colder climates like Europe and Asia. In other words, we didn't invent clothes because we suddenly needed them for a specific freezing environment. We started wearing clothes first in Africa, while it was still relatively warm, and that invention is what later allowed us to survive the freezing migration north. Clothing wasn't a reaction to the cold. Clothing was the technology that made conquering the cold possible in the first place. This is honestly one of the most underrated inventions in human history. Forget fire for a second. Forget the wheel. If early humans hadn't figured out how to wrap animal hide around their bodies, we would have been permanently trapped in Africa. No Europe, no Asia, no Americas. Every single non-African population on Earth today exists because someone, 170,000 years ago, looked at a dead animal and thought, hang on, what if I wore that? Now, what did that first clothing actually look like? Almost certainly not stitched garments. The earliest clothing was probably just draped or wrapped hides, animal skins tied around the body with vines, sinew, or strips of leather, no needle required. And for a shockingly long time, that's all clothing was. Just wrap the dead animal around yourself and hope for the best. The real game changer came much later, with the invention of the sewing needle. The oldest known eyed needles, meaning needles with an actual hole for thread, not just a sharp point, date back around 40,000 to 60,000 years. Discovered at sites including Denisova Cave in Siberia. That's the moment clothing stopped being wear a dead animal and became fitted, tailored, engineered gear. Suddenly you could make sleeves. You could layer. You could actually trap body heat instead of just draping fur over your shoulders and hoping. And this technology mattered more than almost anything else for survival at high latitudes. Neanderthals, remember, also lived in freezing ice age Europe for hundreds of thousands of years. But recent research suggests their clothing may have been simpler, less tailored, more like draped hides than fitted, sewn garments. Homo sapiens, on the other hand, showed up with needles, layered fitted clothing, and significantly better thermal protection. Some researchers genuinely believe this technological gap, tailored clothing versus draped hides, may have given modern humans a real survival edge during the brutal cold snaps of the last ice age. Somewhere out there, a Neanderthal lost the evolutionary game because somebody else invented the jacket first. So let's zoom out. The full timeline looks something like this. 1 million years ago, we lose our body hair. 800,000 years of being cold, exposed, and extremely unprotected. Then, 170,000 years ago, someone invents the wraparound hide and clothing lice move in to celebrate. Then tens of thousands of years later, someone invents the needle and clothing goes from draped animal to actual outfit. And every hoodie, every pair of socks, every ridiculous fast fashion trend you've ever seen scrolling online, all of it is a multi-100,000-year-old survival hack. Wearing a very different outfit today, here's the thing that gets me the most. You got dressed this morning without thinking about it for a single second. But that tiny automatic act pulling a shirt over your head is a direct unbroken line back to a freezing nearly hairless human, standing in the dark, wrapping a dead animal around their body for the very first time, and accidentally inventing one of the reasons our species now lives on every continent on Earth. So next time you're annoyed you have nothing to wear, remember, your ancestors had zero options for 800,000 years, and they figured it out with sticks, vines, and sheer stubbornness. You'll survive picking an outfit. If this kind of thing messes with your brain a little, the idea that something as boring as your t-shirt has a 170,000-year-old survival story, hit subscribe, because that's the entire channel. Every video, we take something you've never once questioned and trace it all the way back to the very first spark. Let me know in the comments what everyday thing you want us to dig into next. See you in the next one.